Hey everybody, Matt Colville here. The stream launches tonight, which I think you probably know, tonight at 7 o'clock, which as of this recording is in 6.5 hours, and so that's pretty exciting. But it is also the end of January, which means it's time for the January Q&A. This is a video we record once a month. I go on Twitter and I ask folks if they have any questions about anything, ask me anything. This is inspired by Marcus Brownlee, one of my YouTube heroes. He does the same thing. I try to keep it to 10 questions. Let's see how well I do. Question 1, this is from Dungeon Handyman. What is the greatest trap or puzzle you have ever come across as a player? As a player, I don't know what the answer is. I can't think off the top of my head of what a great trap or puzzle was. I'm a DM a lot more than I am a player. As a DM, I know the answer. I think this trap comes from the 3rd edition book of Challenges. I'm not sure, but that's a great book anyway, even if this wasn't from there. And a player in my campaign was scouting ahead in a dungeon, pretty typical, and walked into a T intersection, and then the portcullis slammed down behind him. So now he was in an east-west corridor, and the players were all behind him to the south. To his left was a wall with a lever on it, and to his right was what looked like a skeleton floating toward him. And of course, if you play D&D enough, you recognize that skeletons don't float. That's probably a gelatinous cube. The player correctly guessed that they were about to be attacked by a gelatinous cube. All the other players are behind the portcullis, trying to raise it, trying to open it before the gelatinous cube digests their scout friend. Not being fooled by the floating skeleton coming toward him, the player then runs over to the lever and goes to pull the lever, assuming that the lever had something to do with the portcullis. It did not. He pulled on the lever and that opened a trapdoor. He fell through the trapdoor onto a set of spikes, which did a lot of damage to him. And as he was recovering from that and trying to figure out what to do next, the gelatinous cube slid over and went and dropped on him and started digesting him. So that's probably that's the most memorable trap that I can think of off the top of my head. I feel like that story is worth the price of admission all by itself. Ammo asks, what's your all-time favorite non-sci-fi, non-fantasy book? Well, it would probably be a Haruki Murakami book. I think 1Q84. When I read 1Q84, I was so gobsmacked by it that it immediately became my favorite book in my estimation. And I will say that there are lots of books that I read over and over again, and those are almost always science fiction, fantasy, or nonfiction. 1Q84 is a book that I read and it completely obliterated me, and I've never felt the desire, kind of like his other stuff, like I love Wind Up Bird Chronicle. I've never really felt the desire to go back and read it again. Brothers Karamazov also had a similar effect on me. And those 3 books, Wind Up Bird Chronicle, 1Q84, and the Brothers Karamazov are probably my 3 favorite in the sense of most impactful, as opposed to favorite in the sense of would read over and over again books. Marcialine, I think I got that right, Marcialine the Vampire Queen, asks, what's the weirdest article of clothing you've worn? Well, I once was in a play and I was playing, what was the P under the mattress? Once Upon a Mattress. I was in once. The less said about that, the better. And I once went out just in my outfit with like a doublet and hose, as though that were a normal thing to do, because I was once a theater geek. I was with my friends. I was not. It would be weird just to like go to the library just wearing that. But no, I was with my friends and we were being silly and we were young, and that's a good time for that, I think. Not like now when I'm an adult and do not do silly things. Patrick asks, what's your biggest hope coming from making the Warfare Rules open license? So those of you who don't know, we published a book, Strongholds and Followers, and in that book is what I consider a simple but robust and fun method for simulating large-scale combats in D&D. It's not a war game, though. It's something that you play while you're playing D&D. During an encounter, there is a war happening. And this is a result of a lot of thinking on my own experiments and testing out different systems and different assumptions on my friends and different groups. And so I've arrived at a solution that I've tested personally in different campaigns and quite like, and then we tested it for Strongholds and Followers, and then we opened it. So anybody who wants to can use it and publish stuff. We need to facilitate that, I think, a little bit more by taking those rules and publishing them all by themselves in like a rich text format, just a Word document, to make it easy for people to use. But my goal is just, I think D&D would benefit from having a fun, robust system for resolving mass combat. And I don't know that my system, it's certainly not for everybody. I'm not saying that my system should be the one that everybody uses, but if any system is going to catch on, then I think it's going to need to be open so that other people can develop it and make their own stuff for it. Jack J asks, what are your thoughts on monster races or playable monsters? Have you ever had players want to be a minotaur or a dragon? You know, it's funny because I think we mentioned this before, but like in the very original 3 Little Brown booklets that Gary Gygax published back in 1974, he says straight out, look, inevitably when you play this game, your players are going to want to start playing other kinds of characters. Eventually, they're going to want to play a dragon. Let them. He said play a dragon because that, from his point of view, was the most outrageous, most powerful creature he could think of. And if they want to do that, let them. Just make sure that it's a level 1 dragon and that it's going to level up over time. And that is, I think, something that people would expect there to be rules for if they were going to do. But I think that the act of you as a dungeon master figuring that out, how do I take a beholder and turn it into a player character starting at first level and make sure that it only has the kind of abilities that make it balanced for first level play, that is an incredibly useful thing for a dungeon master to do. And also, don't forget, you don't have to get it right the first time. Make the player complicit in your conspiracy so that you are both testing this thing over time and you let the player know, hey, you know, this might not work or we may need to tweak it. The players will understand. Advanced Dungeons and Davids asks, what's your favorite trope in storytelling, D&D or otherwise? I think that trope term is thrown about a bit too much. But that being said, I'm a huge fan of Achilles in his tent. I'm a unironic fan of deploying, you know, the hero who, or the sidekick who leaves in a crisis and lets everybody down. And you thought they were going to break one way or the other and you were waiting to see are they a good person or a bad person. And then it turns out at the last minute they're a bad person. You can't rely on them. And in a good story, you forget about them because that happens somewhere in Act 2. And then at the end of Act 3, they come roaring back and save the day. I'm not going to give you any examples. You can already think of a million examples. Britain Porter, I think it's Britain. It could be Britain, but I think it's Britain Porter, asks, how would you run a murder mystery one-shot? Well, that's a good question. And we are going to do a video about running a session that's just one-on-one. And I actually think that murder mysteries are great for one-on-one sessions in a way that maybe they're not super awesome for group play. But instead of having, I'm just waiting. What I want to do is I want to actually do it. I want to actually design a kind of a murder mystery or just a one-on-one scenario for one player, design it, run it, and then make the video about what worked and what didn't work and use that adventure. And it might be part of the chain campaign coming up. I think there'd be a lot of opportunities to do stuff like that. So that's my goal is, this is kind of a cop-out because I'm not answering your question, but rather than just extemporaneously give some advice right now, actually do it. And then the advice will be, here's what I did, here's what worked, and here's what didn't work, because I think that's a million times more valuable. Valentin asks, this is a great question. Do you practice the voices of your NPCs while alone? Do you make them have conversations with each other? Yes, I 100% do that. I do it all the time. And depending on how the campaign goes, you will get to see some of those conversations play out. Taylor asks, when does the book ship? So excited. Well, Taylor, no one is more excited about that than me. The book in question is the aforementioned Strongholds and Followers, which is this monumental work that we released in PDF in December, mid-December. And now we're waiting for the book to print. And the answer to the question, when does it ship, is I have no idea. I don't know. We've never done this before. And so, the next Kickstarter, I will have great answers to questions like that. All I can do is describe the process we're going through right now and talk about the estimations. And we have today, literally today, about an hour before I started doing this, there was a major milestone in the printing the book process, which is that we got the proofs from FedEx. These are the unopened proofs from our printer of our book. And I haven't opened them yet, and we're going to look at them together for the first time right now.
What you're looking at is the dust jacket. That's what these two pieces on the outside are, because they gave us two different versions to look at with different gloss levels.
Got it.
One's like normal glossy, the other one is extra glossy. So
Holy crap.
They've labeled it so you can kind of
High
see.
gloss, regular gloss. Well, high gloss is very glossy.
Oh, so glossy. You can feel the difference too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is what's this?
Let's see what it says.
Regular gloss lamination.
Oh, okay, because they are suggesting that we
High
get
gloss
it laminated.
I get it.
Because it will make it more durable, which is good.
So this is the cover. This is one version of the cover. There's a couple different versions with different glosses and different laminations we get to pick.
And it's our book. Holy shit.
Whoa, look at that.
Holy shit.
Look at that. This is crazy. Oh man, Nick's artwork is like so awesome looking.
It is. It looks great. It looks as good on the page as you would expect it to.
It's so colorful.
It's super easy to read. The text looks great.
The colors all match up with the PDF.
So yeah, we got the first proofs of our book. It looks amazing. Obviously, I would say that as the author, but the art really does look better it looks better in person, in print, than it does in the PDF, which I would not have guessed would be true, because I typically find PDF colors to be a lot more vibrant, especially some of the comics I read. But this is just gorgeous. Like, the whole thing looks amazing. So now, this is the first time we've seen the book in print like it's real. This is just one signature. There's essentially a whole ton of these. So this is one 16-page group stapled together. So now we give our feedback, and depending on how much work needs to be done to revise it, I mean, they're just printing the PDF, so it should be thumbs up, let's go to print, and then they have to print it and then ship it to the warehouses, and once that happens, then you'll get your books. We don't know exactly how long that's going to take. We've never done this before. I'm surprised it took this long to get to this state, but I think we're talking about another couple of months. Obviously, I would like to be shipping the book right now, but as you can see, we are making progress. Gremlin asks about my dream cast for a Dune movie. This is something that's getting a lot of action right now. A lot of people are, whenever they announce a new cast member for Denis Villeneuve's Dune movie, people tag me because Dune is very close and dear to my heart. It was probably my favorite book for about 15 years. I still love it. I still read it every couple of years. I actually quite liked the David Lynch 1984 movie of Dune. I thought I had a lot to recommend it in spite of being a hot mess. And I loved the documentary, Jodorowsky's Dune. There was a time when if you cut me, I bled melange. And they just announced that Oscar Isaacs is going to be playing Duke Leto, and I think that is fantastic casting because he is such a vital, immediate actor. There's so much depth going on in his performances that people are going to engage with this character, Duke Leto, and his plight, his goal, his hopes and dreams, I think, very quickly. And I think that's critical to a successful Dune movie. But in general, overall, I am cool on the idea of a Dune film. I mean, this has something to do, I think, with how old I am. When I was 15, I loved the idea of a Dune film. But now I'm a little more conscious of the fact that my generation specifically has spent most of its creative energies digging around in the cultural wreckage left by the baby boomers and the generation before them. And so for me, while I'll go see a Dune movie, I loved Denis Villeneuve. I loved Arrival. I loved Sicario. I thought there was a lot to recommend to that Blade Runner movie, Blade Runner 2049. I would rather see that guy make an original science fiction epic, that engaged an audience and not go and dig around in this stuff that came out in 1965. I think the book is great. I don't necessarily need to see it adapted again. Stuart Gregory asks if I've ever made my own class or ancestry, and if so, what were they? Yeah, I made one for the stream tonight, and you'll get to see it tonight when it debuts. I'm sort of waiting for us to be actually streaming to release it. You'll be able to download it for free because it's a super, super pre-alpha thing, and I wanted the player that it was for to get a chance to play it and test it before the internet kind of jumped on it, so to speak. But once we start playing tonight, 7 o'clock, you'll be able to get access to it. Jay Thornton asks, what things do you do? What hobbies do you have besides D&D and game stuff? Well, obviously you have not been watching the NetHack streams or the world building streams. Otherwise you would know I ride time. Miscellaneous Shenanigans asks, do you ever get burned out on DMing? And if you do, what do you do when it happens? Well, of course I do. I think that you can get burned out on anything. And DMing is a very emotionally and intellectually burdensome task. It requires a lot of work. It's hugely rewarding. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. But I get burned out quite easily. And the number one thing I think that cures DM burnout is to go play in someone else's game. And I think the best substitute, if you can't play, the best substitute, I think, is Critical Role. I know those guys are my friends, so that may seem like a plug, but that's one of the things, whenever I watch Critical Role, maybe 10 minutes in, I'm like, oh, I want to run. Oh, I want to run a game. It's so inspiring. Watching them and their game and their players and the way Matt tells the story is so inspiring to me that it instantly cures my DM burnout and makes me start creating. And so that's another, I think, benefit we get. A happy side effect, an unintended consequence, perhaps, of Matt's game. +5, Porcupine of Smiting asks, Plato or Aristotle? The answer is obviously Aristotle. I thought his ethics had a huge impact on me in college and still does. I still think about that all the time. Last question by Sam Sorson, maybe my favorite question. What is your favorite Kamasi Washington song? It's almost certainly Humility from Harmony of Dissonance. That EP came out right after I broke my arm, and it was one of the things that kept me sane. I was delighted to discover there was a new Kamasi Washington album at the time, and I listened to it extensively, and I just love everything that guy does, and his musical collective that he's assembled are all brilliant. And I know that real hardcore, diehard jazz heads think the dude is kind of like a pop jazz dilettante, but not me. I love his stuff. Rule number 1 in our Discord is listen to Kamasi Washington. Thanks for watching, folks. I hope that there were some questions in there that were interesting. I always try to mix it up between D&D questions and random fun questions. And we are running D&D tonight in just a couple of hours. There's a link to our Twitch channel in the doobly-doo below. We changed the name of the Twitch channel from Matt Colville to MCDM, which means any old links you have, any old bookmarks are probably broken now. But if you were a follower or a subscriber, then that'll still work. It's just that we've got people here that also want to do content, and I want to feature other people on the stream, and it would be weird to do that under the Matt Colville banner, and I probably feel weird for them to do it under the Matt Colville banner, and they'd probably feel more comfortable doing it under the MCDM banner. MCDM, by the way, officially stands for Matt Continually Distracts Me. I hope to see all of you folks tonight. You should get a campaign diary later this week, and we will be doing a world building stream Saturday morning at 11 a.m. So you're going to start seeing a lot of content from us, hopefully, because we're going to go back to that state finally. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this, where you should get a running the game video next week. That'd be nice. And a live stream and a campaign diary, kind of a post-mortem. How did it go? And also me just telling the story of what happened in a bite-sized, digestible chunk, and a world building stream. That would be crazy. So expect, if that works, it maybe one of those things might fall out because we may be so busy next week because of all this stuff. But that's the goal, is to be able to do all that and also make books and do other neat stuff and probably play NetHack at some point. Tarna just killed Orcus, and so she's on her way to try to kill Rodney and get the Book of the Dead. I think we might ascend. We might ascend live on stream at some point. Come by twitch.tv/MCDM. Hang out with us tonight. We're going to play D&D, and crazy stuff is going to happen. Until next time, until tonight maybe, be seeing you.